This tournament has a habit of breaking things. Just days before the knockout stages would even begin, it claimed its first victim. Tunisia, a nation hoping to make their mark on this World Cup stage, sacked their head coach in the middle of the tournament itself. A casualty of chaos. A casualty of panic. The world watched and the consensus was clear. It was strange. It was cruel. And then something far worse was about to unfold. On June 18th in Vancouver, the World Cup took a victim of a completely different kind. This one would not involve boardrooms or press releases. This one would not happen behind closed doors. No, this victim would fall in front of thousands of screaming fans, on the grass of a packed stadium, on what was supposed to be the greatest night in the entire history of Canadian soccer. His name was Ismail Kona. To understand why an entire nation went silent in the middle of a 6-0 victory, one must understand exactly what happened to him that night. One must understand the context, because the context makes it so much worse. This was Canada's night. They were supposed to own it. 40 years had passed since the Maple Leaf first appeared at a World Cup. 40 years of waiting. 40 years of dreaming. And now, here they were, thrashing Qatar on home soil, in front of an absolutely deafening crowd, on their way to their first-ever World Cup victory. The scoreline told the story of dominance, 3-0 up. The momentum was theirs, the stadium was theirs, the night was theirs. Jonathan David was writing history. The forward was on his way to a hat trick, the first hat trick by a host nation player at a World Cup since Sir Geoffrey Hirst in 1966. 60 years. 60 years waiting for that moment, and here it was, happening right now in Vancouver in front of home fans who had waited their entire lives for this. Qatar had already been reduced to 10 men. A red card. Everything was slipping away from them. Everything was perfect for Canada. The script was written, the story was theirs to tell, and then came the 51st minute. 8 minutes into the second half, the perfect night stopped being perfect. Canada was charging forward. Kona had the ball. The midfielder was doing what he did best, driving his team through the middle of the pitch, the engine that made everything work. He was trying to play the ball when it happened. Qatar's Aim Medbo came in late. He came in hard. He came in from behind. What followed was a sound that nobody in a stadium ever wants to hear. The bone snap was audible. Players near the incident said you could hear it clearly, that sickening crack of bone breaking under force. Jesse Marsh, Canada's manager, was only a few feet away. He witnessed it directly. And afterward he said it plainly. It was right in front of us and everyone could hear it. Kona looked down at his own leg. The camera caught him in that moment, a young man in pure shock, holding a leg that was visibly, unmistakably badly broken. Around him, the stadium began to sense something was terribly wrong. An assistant coach screamed at the referee. The anger was immediate. The realization was instantaneous. And in that instant, the loudest stadium in the world fell completely, utterly silent. What happened next would tell everyone watching exactly who these Canadian players were. Kona's teammates rushed to him. They didn't come gently. They came in anger. They came in fury at the needless nature of the challenge. A scuffle erupted between the two benches. Medbo stood alone, his hands on his head, as if trying to comprehend what he'd done. And in the middle of all of it, lying on a stretcher, breathing from an oxygen tank, Ismail Kona did something remarkable. He gave a thumbs up to the crowd. He waved. His manager would later describe what he witnessed. Kona was making everybody else feel at ease with the fact that he was the one who was injured. It wasn't an act. It wasn't for the cameras. It was simply who he was. An incredible statement about Kona as a person, Marsh would say, and he meant it. Lying there in pain, facing a World Cup that was suddenly over, Kona hugged his coach. He waved to his country. He let them know that it was okay to keep going. That they should keep going. That he would be okay. And they did. 10 minutes after play resumed, after the stretcher had been carried away and Kona had been taken to the hospital, Nathan Saliba stepped up, the substitute who had replaced Kona at left back. The young player tasked with filling impossible shoes. Saliba scored a free kick. In any other match on any other night it would have been a moment of pure celebration. His moment, his goal, his World Cup memory. But as he turned to celebrate, a staffer handed him something. It was a number 8 jersey, Kona's jersey. Saliba held it up to the crowd. That single image, a player holding up the jersey of an injured teammate, became one of the defining pictures of this entire World Cup. Not a trophy moment, not a victory lap. Just a young man honoring someone he loved. During the hydration break, cameras caught Marsh in tears. The weight of what had happened was hitting everyone. The goalkeeper, Maxim Crepeau, a man who had broken his own leg in horrific fashion and missed the entire 2022 World Cup because of it, was on the pitch consoling a teammate. "You're not alone," he told them, "but we have a job to finish for him." Those words captured everything. Canada went on to win 6-0, but by then, nobody was really celebrating a scoreline anymore. There was only one story left to tell, and it wasn't about the goals. If you are outside of Canada, you might not know the name. But you should. Ismail Kona was 24 years old. He was born in Abidjan, in the Ivory Coast, on the other side of the world from where this night would unfold. At just 7 years old, he left that country behind and moved to Montreal to be reunited with his mother. He was a child chasing a better life, following family, following dreams. He grew up in the local Quebec soccer scene. He came through the CF Montreal Academy, Canada's pathway to excellence. In 2021, he signed his first professional contract. That was the beginning. From there, the rise was rapid and meteoric. A club record move took him to Watford in England, then Marseille in France, then a loan spell at Rennes. And finally, a permanent transfer to Sassuolo in Italy's Serie A4 European leagues, all before his mid-20s. The trajectory of a player going somewhere, the path of someone special. He earned more than 40 caps for Canada. He had represented them at the 2022 World Cup. And now here he was at 2026 in his prime, playing on the biggest stage the game offers on the pitch. Kona was Canada's engine. A box-to-box midfielder, a ball carrier. The guy who drove Canada through the middle of the field, the player who turned defense into attack in a single movement. Manager Jesse Marsh understood his importance better than anyone. "There is no like-for-like replacement," Marsh said. "He is a big part of the heart of this team." But his teammates didn't talk about his passing range or his statistics when they reflected on what was lost that night. They talked about him. Alistair Johnston described a kid who was so easygoing it seemed impossible. A young man who loved the sport so much he would stay up all night just playing two-touch with the guys, working on his craft, perfecting his game. Johnston explained why it hurt so much to watch him go down on such a needless challenge. Because Kona was more than just a player. He was the heartbeat. Jonathan David, the man who had just scored a historic hat trick on the greatest night of his career, couldn't even enjoy it. He stood in the aftermath of his own brilliance, unable to celebrate. "He means everything to this team," David said. "Someone we love a lot." Moise Bambito, who himself had only recently returned from a broken leg of his own, spoke simply and with weight. "We just have to make him proud." Those weren't the words of teammates talking about a player. Those were the words of brothers, of a family, and that family had just lost one of its members in the cruelest way imaginable. There was, at least, a small grace in the aftermath. Before the Qatari delegation left for the hospital, Medbo himself walked into the Canadian dressing room. He came to apologize. He came to explain that it was an accident, that nobody meant for it to happen, that he was sorry. Both managers agreed on this point. Marsh did not fault Medbo for the injury itself. It was an accident, A moment of poor judgment that spiraled into tragedy, but not malice. What Marsh could not understand, however, was the protest from the Qatar bench. After all that had happened, after the bone had snapped, after the injury had occurred, the Qatari coaches argued that the red card should not have even been issued. They protested a decision made for a foul that had broken a man's leg. Tension stayed high right through the final whistle. There was an icy exchange between the two coaches as the match ended. Cold words between men who understood that something had fundamentally changed the nature of this game. But Marsh was not interested in dwelling on it. He had somewhere far more important to be. He left his own press conference early. The post-match interviews, the questions, the analysis, none of it mattered. Marsh needed to be with Kona and his family at the hospital. Kona was preparing for surgery, and his manager would be there. And that's the cruelty of this sport and of this tournament. Ismail Kona's World Cup was over, just like that. After all those years, after all those leagues, after the journey from Abidjan to Montreal to Europe's biggest stages, after decades of dreaming, of sacrifice, of work, of believing. After everything, on the single greatest night his national team had ever had, on the night when his country was thrashing its opponents, on the night when history was being written in his honor, it ended on a stretcher. There would be no knockout stages for him. No chance to play in the rounds where legends are made. No opportunity to lift the trophy with his brothers. No redemption story. No fairy tale ending. Just a stretcher and surgery and the long road to recovery that might never bring him back to this stage. But Canada would keep going, they would have to. Johnston captured the resolve perfectly. It's given us another reason to play for him. Canada are now almost certain to reach the knockout rounds, and they will carry Kona with them, in their hearts, in their minds. On that number 8 jersey that will live in their memories. They will fight for him. They will push for him. And every goal, every victory, will be for the young man who waved goodbye on the greatest night of his country's history. The World Cup took another victim this week. Not a coach in a boardroom this time. Not an executive making a political decision. Not an official or a bureaucrat or someone behind the scenes. Just a 24-year-old kid who wanted to play, who dreamed of this moment his whole life, who moved across the world with his mother at 7 years old to chase something greater, who waved to his country in pain even while his own leg was breaking. That's the image that will stay. Not the injury, not the pain, not the stretcher, but the thumbs up. The wave, the kid telling an entire nation that it was going to be okay. Get well soon, Ismail. All of Canada is behind you, and honestly, so are the rest of us. This tournament broke many things, but it couldn't break the spirit of a boy who smiled through it all.